This is my 1968 Daihatsu Fellow, and it's a tidy little rig. It was one of Daihatsu's first passenger cars, and 56 years later, it still lives on. Last time we saw the car, we got the engine out, we fully disassembled it, and we made a game plan as to what we're doing with the car. We threw out the option to potentially engine swap this car, and there were some great suggestions in the comments. Even still, last time we saw the car, there were still new suggestions being thrown out. But what we've decided to do is actually repair the standard 360cc twin cylinder two-stroke engine. It's an awesome little power plant that is quite rare, and it's also very unique. The other thing that I always wanted to kind of point out was it's a 1960s model car. It's got tiny wheels, tiny brakes. It's not made to go fast. It will probably have a top speed of about 80 k's an hour, and that's all I would really feel safe doing in this car. So we're going to restore the engine. I have ordered some parts from Indonesia, so I've got a box coming, and basically what we need to do is restore and refurb everything that we can on the car. And I want to have this so basically you pop the bonnet and it looks, I won't say brand new because I'm not going to go to the stage of zinc coating every nut and bolt, but I want it to look very nice under the engine bay. I do enjoy doing this process. It's something that at the end of it, the end result of the build, it really pays off, and it's when people comment stuff like, hey, this looks really nice, makes you feel good. Exactly like what I did with Kevo. Kevo turned out really good, and although it's not painted yet, I am really stoked with the outcome. We still are taking shirt orders for Kevo. Get your orders in if you want to grab a shirt. It also helps support the skid factory and helps us do what we do here, building cool cars and not doing skids. So first things first, I'm going to head up to my mate Westy's house because we're going to check out these pistons. Unfortunately, the pistons I ordered were wrong, so we're going to make up a game plan and start restoring Jolly, the mighty good fellow.
This little ZM360 would have to be one of the oldest engines that I've ever worked on, and being that it's so old, there's actually not that much information out there. Luckily, there's a bunch of enthusiasts, and shout out to a couple of blokes who actually sent me a workshop manual that I can work from. I was also gobsmacked that you can still find parts for these engines. Unfortunately, the parts I got were wrong, but hey, you live and you learn, and we're just going to have to work with what we've got.
In my career as a mechanic, I've met hundreds of talented humans, and Westy is one of those blokes. You've been hanging out in my workshop recently, but today we're down in Westy's workshop, which consists of this 20-foot shipping container. Westy is building a car for a customer, so he's utilised the shipping container as being a bit of a mobile workshop, so that you can rock up to place of residence and work on that car. Currently building an epic Cortina. It is 13B bridgey, is that right?
Yeah, street port bridge, so mild street port, yeah.
And everything has been hand built by Westy. The brake lines, every little bracket,
everything, yeah.
You're currently hand swaging some hardline.
Making parts for oil cooler pressure fittings.
Westy's the kind of bloke that instead of running to the part shop and spending an hour on the road, you'd rather just make it yourself. So spend an hour on the lathe or the mill and turn something up, which I really respect. The art of metal craft is dying these days.
Yeah, it is.
And it's cool to see even the little things that you've done for me, mate. I've been so impressed, and it's really cool to...
Thanks, man.
Really cool to see your skills at work. Today we're doing stuff on the Daihatsu, so we have got the barrels, we've got the whole engine apart. I ordered some parts from Indonesia, but unfortunately the pistons that were sent are actually wrong. So there's nothing really wrong with the original pistons, bar they're just very dirty and the bore's a bit shiny. So we're down here with Westy today and we're going to do something about that.
Yeah, we're going to give it a go. So we've had a brief look at these barrels down at Woody Shed the other day, and we just threw a caliper over there, and to be honest, they look pretty good. Woody's mentioned already that they're shiny. We're going to get a hone in there today and do something about that. The pistons also measured to be fairly round as well, so we're going to clean them up and see what we can do there as well, and we're going to get these rings off and see if we can repurpose them as well. These things aren't under a tremendous amount of stress. It's not a highly complex engine. It was never designed to make heaps of power, so I'm fairly confident we'll be able to get it back together with the parts that we've pulled out of it and still have a good service life remaining.
I've really been enjoying spending some time with my mate Westy, and if there's one thing that I've learned, it's that nothing is impossible. Everything can be fixed or made if need be. And it's pretty cool to see these parts that are near 60 years old can live on to survive another day. There's no service book in the glove box of this car, so I have no idea the history of this engine. The odometer does read 75,000 kilometers, so no doubt this engine has definitely been apart before. All in all, the barrels and pistons are in pretty good shape, with the exception of some light scoring. The worst of it was on the rear cylinder, but it was nothing too crazy. All we've done is hit it with some wet and dry to remove any of the high spots. After a quick check with the dial gauge, we confirmed that the high spots have been removed. We then double checked the bore clearance with a feeler gauge to ensure that we're still within spec to give these barrels a light hone.
Everything's cleaned up. I probably could have delivered it to Westy all clean, but Westy pointed out it's actually better to clean things yourself to inspect as you go, like when you wash a car. And you notice all those little rock chips everywhere.
All those stone dents, mate.
The pistons, they were covered in carbon. I didn't realise one of them actually had a bit of damage on there. We've just given it a quick little love with some, what was that, 800 wet and dry?
Some 800 and a bit of 1500.
And then thrown them in the lathe to give them just a clean. They came up really nice. This is a 1968 engine. They were made, they power like a bunch of different vehicles. I think they even do tuk-tuks in like Thailand and stuff. But it is still hard to get parts for, and proof is in the pudding. I ordered pistons from a guy who deals with this engine, and I've got sent the right ones. Maybe that was a translation issue, but look, we're gonna use what we've got, and that is reuse these pistons. One of them has a bit of like pitting in the dome too, which could be maybe some detonation or
could be detonation. Could have burnt water at some point too. We don't know.
Bit of steam cleaning.
It's not going to affect its operation.
No, definitely not. No.
None of what's going on here is going to affect its operation. It'll be fine.
So now we're ready to hone, which is going to give it a quick little light hone. The rings, they measure up okay. Westy was going to make up a little jig for the lathe, and we're going to dress the rings on the outside, but I think for now we're going to give it a quick hone.
We'll give them a hone, have a look at what the rings look like in the bore once we've dressed it up, and then we'll call what we do with the rings from there. But I think probably just a bit of dressing by hand with some wet and dry, just to take the shine off the surface of the ring and help them bed back into the new surface that we've got going on into the bore.
Yep. This is not a 2,000 horsepower
No.
2JZ.
No.
I think it makes like 25 horsepower from factory, so...
It's not a how-to either, so don't blame us
yeah.
if you do it and get it wrong.
Backyard rebuild.
Yeah,
that's a good title there, actually. Sweet. Alright, let's bust out the hone, and then we can lay some paint down, can't we, after that, yeah?
Yeah.
Get some paint on there. Sweet.
Pretty sure we have it.
You happy?
Yep. For what we're doing here, that's going to be perfect.
There is meant to be footage here of this deck surface being cleaned up, but unfortunately some dually lost the SD card. We also cleaned up each piston ring just using some wet and dry, as well as polishing the gudgeon pins in the lathe. All in all, everything turned out as best it could possibly be when it comes to reusing these parts. Ideally, you would want to replace them, but unfortunately, they aren't available, so we're using what we've got.
I've come down to visit our mate John in his trusty little workshop. He has some awesome tools, and we're going to replace the bearings in the crank. John, have you done this kind of job before?
Never.
Are you feeling confident?
No.
I was not feeling confident. I've never done anything like this. I had a quick look on YouTube and it was a bit too hard for me, so that's why I've come down and see John, but
We'll learn as we go.
I think you'll be fine, mate. Sweet. So you've already got the couple of bearings off. What's the plan from here? How does this come apart?
split the two ends, we've got to press that off. I made a little thing
He made some special tools. Sweet.
there to do it.
All right.
I looked at some YouTube videos. And
This is a how-to or maybe a how not to replace the bearings on your two-stroke crank.
see how that goes.
Sweet as. Let's hook in. I'm all for learning new skills and stepping outside of my comfort zone, but there's a saying, none of us is stronger than all of us, which is why I enlist the help of my mates like Westy, like John, to complete these oddball tasks. After I removed the crank from the engine, I gave it a solid degrease and got rid of any of excess carbon that was deposited on the crank, but a very silly mistake I made. I didn't coat any of these items in CRC, so the bearings were cooked before, but now after sitting for a couple of weeks, they are well and truly full of corrosion, but luckily we are replacing them. Getting the crank apart wasn't too bad, just took some expert John and
Bit of luck.
I was scared of doing it myself. I also don't have a press that is that good, so that was easy. But the next thing we ran into is the parts are wrong. Some of the bearings are going to work, but there's the center one, which there's a ZM360 in the Fellow, and then I think it went to Fellow Max. It was different, and then these parts are for a S38 Daihatsu, which is different again. This is the center bearing, and they've also got a center crankshaft seal to split between the two cylinders, and they're an extra 10mm in diameter, so they're wrong. This uses like where's that labyrinth thing gone? There we go. This uses a labyrinth in between the two cases, and it also feeds oil to the main bearings, the roller bearings in the crank there. It was really gummed up, and potentially that wasn't getting oil, which is why those bearings were so noisy. So now it's back to, well, not the drawing board, but back to ordering some more parts. It's currently the weekend, so I'll leave this with you, John. John also wants to skim up the flywheel because we're going to be making so much horsepower that...
Yeah, he's going to have 3 more now, at least.
Yeah, no. Honestly, I don't care. I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, you can bead blast that one for me. How about that?
If Dave gets hold of it, we'll need it.
Sweet. So we'll order some bearings and then come back at a later date to assemble this. Cool. Thanks, John. Cheers. Thanks for your time.
You're all good.
The Fellow would have to be the weirdest vehicle I think I've ever worked on, and if you want to be a weird guy like myself, jump on the merch store, get yourself a Fellow shirt. We've also got stickers. Every Fellow shirt sold receives a free sticker. www.theskidfactory.com. We've also got heaps of other merch on there. Hats, stubby coolers, key tags. Support the show if you please, and grab yourself some merch. Saw some bearings from the local CBC, had them in Australia, came the next day, so stoked on that. Now we've just got to remember how it all goes back together, John. So it's been a week, it's another week later now, but yeah, we've got some fresh bearings, we'll press this on and get the crank back together. Assembling new bearings onto the crankshaft is pretty well just the reversal of the disassembly process, with the exception of some heat on the inner bearing races, just to expand those bearings to make sure they do slip onto the crankshaft with ease. The hardest part was actually clocking the crankshaft. There was a massive amount of run out on this crank when we first pressed it together. The inner parts of the crank are actually keywayed, so they line up, easy done, away you go. The outside of the crank is actually just a press fit, so with some enthusiastic work with the hammer back and forward on the V-blocks and using a dial gauge, we got the crank down to 2 thou run out, which is actually the specification in the workshop manual. We actually measured it before disassembly and it was 20 thou, so way better than what it was before. Once we've got all the bearings installed onto the crank, we can install this oil slinger, I suppose you'd call it. It directs oil to the front of the distributor housing, and also installed the distributor drive gear. We then lubricate all the bearings, and then it was time to finish off the day with a celebratory lemon squash.
Yeah. Lemon squash.
One fresh Daihatsu crank, ready to go, all new bearings, everything's been oiled up, ready to be assembled. It actually wasn't that bad, John, it's pretty good.
Smack around it, do what it's told.
Give it a little smack, little love tap with the hammer, and we're sorted. This is now ready to go into the crankcase, but it first needs to get cleaned up. So I'm off to visit my mate Dave at Top Coat Auto Detailing to get some stuff dry ice blasted. Let's go check it out. Well, this episode's been full of special guests, and introducing another mate of mine, this is Dave from Top Coat Auto Detailing. Dave specialises in restoring, well, hang on, what can we say here? You restore underbodies?
Underbodies, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yep, underbodies, undercarriages, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
The places that no one wants to clean and no one wants to look until I get onto it. So.
Dave's got this really fancy dry ice blaster, which I'm keen to give a shot, and I've got all the Daihatsu parts here that we can blast up. A few ways you could have done it. We could have vapor blasted, we could have sand blasted. I could have just hit it with the gurney and then painted over the top of them, but I'm really keen to see how the dry ice blasting goes. And it's something that Dave also wants to get into too. So this is a bit of a tester to see how we go. And if it works out well, then you can bring your parts down to Dave and he can clean them up for you. So, sweet. I suppose headphones on, hook in.
Yes, and a key thing is cleaning without degreaser or chemicals, which leaves residue on the part. So this is dry ice is the way to clean them.
Sweet as. All right, well, let's
go.
in.
Once again, these parts have already been degreased before coming to see Dave at Underbelly Restos. The residual schmutz you can see on these parts is actually quite stubborn, but it's no match for this awesome dry ice blaster. In my opinion, the best thing about this process is that it leaves no media behind. The ice dissolves to water and there's no fine sand or glass media to be worried about that potentially could get stuck in oil galleries or bearing surfaces.
Well, there we go. A box full of engine parts, all cleaned up. It's not perfect, I will say.
No, but I don't think it's meant to be in the sense because it's not sandblasting, it's not vapor blasting, it's dry ice blasting. So it's designed to clean. You do still have to, as we found today, you still do have to use tools to get into corners to release that caked on grease.
Yep.
But then it comes out quite nice and neat.
I think it turned out pretty good. I could assemble this as it is, but I do want to paint things up. The kind of what I'm going for with the Daihatsu was a bit of a resto, so it all comes out really clean. And
I think it gives you the option whether you want to paint it or leave it.
well,
right?
the beauty of this is right now I can actually go back and just paint this straight away, which is a plus rather than spending hours
and it's dry. And it doesn't leave, dry ice doesn't leave a residue.
Yep.
So when a degreaser leaves a residue, the paint will stick initially, but then will just come off.
I was actually amazed at how well it restored the plastic. The Dizzy Cat and the horn came out like brand new, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And this was a bit of a test for Dave too. He does do Underbelly Restos, the full dries, but looking to get into some more.
And it was enjoyable because you get to see a part, and I'm very mechanical. I like parts.
There we go.
So and we're able to make them look clean, maybe not brand new, but clean.
Yep.
Which is the idea. Yeah.
If you're looking to get some stuff done, I've got links in the description for Dave's business. Give him a follow on Instagram and see what he's up to week to week.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, bro.
Appreciate it.
Easy.
Let's go and restore this Daihatsu some more.
For a car that's 56 years old, I think it's aged quite well. The exterior of the car has been given some love, but the engine bay, well, that's another story. So today we're going to share the love and give this engine bay a new lease on life.
We're back in the shed and it's time to start looking at painting up the Fellow's engine bay. I've made a start on a heap of parts just to kind of freshen everything up, and I'm already getting carried away. I pulled apart the starter motor and the alternator, or generator as it were. My dumbass may have damaged the thread on the end of what's this whole thing called?
Armature?
That's not the armature, is it?
I thought it was the armature.
Isn't that just the armature?
Oh, I don't know.
Conductor? Whatever, this thing. It's amateur hour over here. Westy actually, I came to the rescue, he cleaned up the thread. We also cleaned up the conductor? Yeah, we'll call that the conductor. I'm sure I've got that right. I look for brushes for this stuff. If you know of a company that sells brushes of the larger variety, I've called many different supply companies for auto electricians, and it seems to be the throwaway society where you just replace stuff these days and no one repairs things. Even getting alternator brushes for a 2JZ alternator, apparently I've got the last ones in the country, which I find very hard to believe. So if you've got a secret supply of electronica stuff, please hit me in the DMs or comment below. Really keen to actually find some brushes for the generator and also the starter motor. They're still there, but they're just because they're worn while I'm here, I'd like to replace them. So I'm taking that next step forward and restoring everything that I can and looking at the engine bay now. Originally I was just like, sweet, I'll just get the foil out and we'll wrap everything up and give it a bomb with some white paint. But now I think I'm actually just we're gonna tear apart everything. I'm gonna drop the front K-frame. I'm probably not gonna get it powder coated like I did with Kevo, but at least get everything off and I can repair as much as I can. The tie rods and everything on the steering look okay. The boots are all like gooey and it's like they've turned to Play-Doh from 60 years of just sitting around. So I wanna do something about them. But the aim for today is to get the engine bay painted and color matched in the same white. And then also paint up every little bracket. So stuff like the bonnet latch and the brake muster cylinder, I want to paint those things black so it looks nice. I could go the next step forward and actually zinc plate or zinc coat some of these items. I did actually look at doing it yourself. It's not a bad process, you can do it yourself at home, but that is a next level of stuffing around, which I don't want to do, and I would like to get this done as quickly as possible. I've got Geordie here behind the camera who's going to help me out today, so I think that's just the best thing to do is just take some photos of where everything goes and then hook in, tear this thing apart and bomb on some paint, and then find that the paint we bomb on there is going to react with the standard paint and it's going to blister, and then we go back to bare metal. That better not happen.
Before we tear the Fellow apart, we've taken a heap of photos for reference, and we're also just double checking what this fuse box actually does. I will be probably replacing this with something from the 21st century. From here, we're removing everything and anything that enters or exits the engine bay. So all of the wiring, the accelerator, choke cables, brake, master cylinder, everything is going to come out of this engine bay so it can be fully stripped and painted properly.
Oh, maybe we can Ferris Bueller it and wind back the clock.
Is that where it's stuck in reverse or something?
Dodgy Sydney record spec. Sydney importers.
I'll get the drill.
I think it's actually working, eh?
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, ever so slowly.
I mentioned at the start of the episode, the engine is the oldest engine I've ever worked on, but this car would actually be the oldest vehicle I think I've ever worked on, excluding my 1962 Fairlane, which I haven't really worked on that yet, so we'll call this the oldest car so far. Having only done 75,000 Ks, all of these bushes and tie rod ends, everything actually is in quite good shape. It's just the rubber has perished from a lot of items, so they're going to have to be replaced, but for now, we're just going to focus on painting the engine bay. With everything stripped from the engine bay, I made a start on prepping for paint, so I grabbed the Tool Pro sander and hooked in. After going through a few sheets of sandpaper, I realised there was a fair bit of surface rust under the paint, so I then moved on to using the wire wheel, but it kept on getting worse and worse. The snowball is already getting bigger and bigger. I didn't actually realise how bad the rust was under the paint here. Some spots are okay, but it just seems to, like, I think you call it like spider webbing, where there's one little rust patch, but then you rub that back with the wire wheel and it kind of spreads. So I've now wrapped the whole car up just to create less mess, and I'm gonna actually try and paint strip the bad parts. I might just end up paint stripping the whole engine bay back to bare metal, which is not what I wanted to do in the first place, but I don't want to do a dodgy job, and I'm stoked that I'm doing this myself so that I can do it the right way, well, the best way I know how, rather than, you know, that's the downside to paying someone to do the job for you. You don't actually know what kind of job they're doing. So I'm going to clean up as much of this as I can, hit it with some deox, like some anti-rust stuff, and then bomb on some primer. We'll see how I go. I just want it to be white, but at the end of the day, I want to do the best job that I can do, and I don't want rust to pop up in a few years' time. Using paint stripper is a prick of a job. Be sure to follow the necessary safety precautions. This stuff will eat your skin, and definitely don't get it in your eyes. With all the paint removed, it's straight back onto the wire wheel to remove as much rust scale as possible. I'm then using some CRC Evapo Rust Spray Gel, which is a product I've never used before. This is straight out of the can, sprayed onto the surface, and I left it for 2 hours to react with the rust. It worked really well and neutralized all the little rust spots, even in the hard to reach places. It was then as simple as rinsing it with some water and wiping it down with a clean cloth. The underside of the bonnet was absolutely atrocious, so it's on the list to get painted too. I didn't want to scratch the bonnet, so I picked up some Tool Pro panel stands from Super Cheap Auto, which support the bonnet whilst I can prep it for paint.
Well, there's one coat of epoxy primer down. I've had this epoxy primer for ages and it's lasted me so long. I've done the Crown engine bay, Kevo's engine bay, and now the little Fellow. The makeshift Ridge Rider booth's coming in handy again. This is just, I don't really care about stuff in the paint. It's more so to keep the mess at bay in the shed. This epoxy primer is real sticky, so I've laid down some stuff on the floor. Oh, there's me handy little scalpel. That's come up not too bad. I have already got some runs, and it wouldn't be a woody paint job if there weren't some runs in there somewhere. Engine bays suck too. There's so many little hidey holes. You've got to get all the angles going, but no, it's looking good so far, and decided to do the underside of the bonnet, obviously, just so it all looks nice and neat. I've got the little radiator support piece here and the bonnet hinges, so all coming together. I'll just let this kind of flush off for a bit longer, lay down one more coat, and then I'll bash on the white, the color matched white. Funnily enough, this epoxy primer actually almost matches it too, but at least there's some primer down, then I've got some color matched color going too. So there we have it.
I would like to highlight the fact once again that I'm not a spray painter. I'm not a panel beater. I'm just a bloke having a go, doing the best job that I possibly can. I don't care about the paint runs. I don't care about the quality of the job. All I care about is that it's one color, and I've definitely achieved that. I'm not building a top 60 car to show off at Summer Nuts. All I want to do is get this cool little JDM grocery getter back on the roads so that I can go have fun cruising with my mates.
I've said it before and I'll say it again, this is the last time I'll ever paint something in the shed until the next project at the start of the year when I know I'm going to be doing a full respray. Maybe not. Basically, the shed just gets messy and I don't like it. There's white overspray over everything now, but the final outcome is pretty impressive. Originally, I was just going to basically bond this with some white paint, even just from a rattle can, but as we kind of dove further into it, the surface rust from this battery side was not up to standard, so I basically stripped the whole engine bay. We've neutralised that rust and just given it a full respray from bare metal. It turned out really nice. From the rails down, I've just used some CRC black zinc. This was recommended from a friend of mine and it's now my favourite paint. That turned out really nice and I've just kind of touched up the tunnel and everything. This now has kind of transformed into a bit of an OEM plus resto, and I've actually removed the rear control arms, I've removed the rear diff, and the whole driveline of this vehicle is now out. So the car is completely stripped bar the body and the interior. Funnily enough, I actually am going to get into the interior because there's a bit of surface rust underneath the carpet which I want to fix up, but I'll get to that at a later date. So right now the car's fully stripped. It's been quite hard to get it to this stage. The whole car is, not only is it close to 60 years old, so all the fasteners are very rusty. The other thing is it's been covered in this tarry underbody like sound deadener spray stuff, which is not a factory thing. It's just impregnated on all the split pins and all the nuts and bolts. So a 10mm bolt is turned into a 12mm bolt, and you've got to literally chisel this stuff off before you can get it undone. So it's been quite difficult to work with, but now I've got everything stripped from the car. Everything has been removed and now cleaned up. So the cross member, the control arms on the front, the control arms on the rear, the diff braces, everything's been sent to a powder coater. So it's getting sandblasted and powder coated. I was going to do it myself, but for the sake of saving myself a lot of time for a few $100, the outcome of powder coating is a lot better. So that's all getting done. I've ordered some bushes. I've got some bushes arriving, which are not the exact same bush for this. They are a little bit bigger and I have to cut them down and do some custom stuff, but at least they're still rubber, which is what I wanted. So they're coming, and pretty well at the back here, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff which I've just been working on. I want this car to be, as I said, OEM plus. I want this to be fully restored, and when you pop the engine bay, it's gonna look fresh. So I've got everything kind of laid out on the bench here, everything from pulleys to exhaust manifold, steering arms, everything I've actually painted up myself. I get to this point and it's a bit daunting to be like, crap, this all has to go somewhere, and where does it go? I've got boxes full of stuff that I get a bit scared, but I know that I'll be able to pull it off and get this car back together. Once you get the ball rolling, everything kind of just merges back to one. So you'll see that on a future episode of the Skid Factory. I've got Geordie booked in to come around. We're going to reassemble that engine. Hopefully by then I've got a cross member and control arms and everything can kind of get pieced back together. I'm really keen to get this little fellow back on the road and cutting some laps in it. We've also had some t-shirt designs made up. They are now live on theskidfactory.com. Thanks to Paul from Yeah Nice for doing the design. Awesome little design, and we've got some text there. It's the smoky little fellow. So thank you, Paul, and thank you to all of those that support the show by buying merch. And also I want to say thanks to everyone who commented all the positive stuff on my recent video announcing the arrival of Jimmy. My world has completely changed and I'm so in love. And I've been taking a slower approach to work here and spending a lot of time at home with the family. So thank you for understanding, and shout out to all the dads or mums out there. It's a wonderful thing. So thanks for watching. Enjoy the moment and drive safe. I'll see you next time on the Skid Factory. Cheers.
I've tried to jam as much content as possible into this episode, and it was a little bit of a longer one, so thanks for watching all the way to the end. Thank you so much to our Patreon supporters that support the Skid Factory. If you'd like to write your name in the credits or send a message to your mate, sign on up and support the show. What's for dinner? Having butter chicken and Rogan Josh. Don't forget the puppet arms.
It's not. So yeah, it's not the state. So that is that the whole armature then?
I'm sure it's the armature.
Would you just call it the windings? Coil windings?
Coil windings, yeah. The stator's the outer.
See, this is the same thing for me. Is I've grown up in the throwaway society of you never really. I mean, I do, but you never really pull things apart.
We were told this 16, 17 years ago.
At TAFE.
At TAFE.
Yeah, but you just go, oh, there's got a dodgy alternator, throw it in the bin. Sweet. I'm going to get blasted in the comment section for this.
Amateur hour.
We'll call it the thingamajong. I don't know, whatever. There is a blue light there.
Yeah, we're on now.
All right. Geordie wasn't recording, I just did this whole thing. Take number 2. The first one was better anyway. What's a bet? All right, we'll go from here. Watching all the way till the end of the video. My homie, I like it. You might be the kind of guy that likes buying some merch. So jump on the store, maybe grab yourself a Fellow shirt. And if you want a Skid Factory Fellow sticker, well, they're free with a shirt, so you've got to buy a shirt too. Thanks for watching. You can also grab this merch up here if you click the link. There's a little QR code, maybe scan it or just click that link if you're on a computer. If you want to see another video, hit this one here. And if you want to subscribe, hit this one here. Thanks for watching. Drive safe and enjoy the moment. I'll see you next week with more Fellow content. Cheers.